Wow, the polar opposite that's going on between my notes that are written on scraps of paper and a multiple stand with acrylic back iPad looking thing. Yeah, this is night and day. This is the past. This is Tolkien shit, and that is
you're riding the horse, and I'm in a buggy.
You should probably just drive a little further than buggy. Yeah, but yeah.
An automobile.
Wow. You were not even spaceship.
No.
Spaceship feels like the obvious answer here. Or jetpack.
It's like a car with heat.
Self-heated steering wheel.
Hand-heated steering wheel.
Yeah.
What are you using, Nick?
Just using my Google Drive app on the phone. They're not very robust notes. I'm looking at like less than a dozen words here.
Do you want to just say all 12 words now?
Just
get 'em out of the way.
leave. We go home early. Go to sleep. No, without before the session last night, I would have been much more high level about some of the granular options I've been exploring. But I have more firm opinions on those now.
And we had previously called this the year of the granular synthesizer.
I think so.
We did, and I was going to bring that back up.
Snuck up on me, personally.
Because it is the end of the year.
Yeah.
And I think our prediction was correct.
So I didn't read the brief. I misunderstood the assignment. I didn't get anything granular pretty much all year. None of my notes have anything granular.
I started off a couple months ago. I was like, why do I have any granular anything? Because I was like paring shit down and I was looking at beads with like, side eye kind of thing. And then I went completely the fucking opposite direction. And now I have 3 granular devices that I like quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
So you were like cramming for the test. You knew this was coming up.
I forgot the test was even happening. It was serendipitous that,
How do you want to approach this? Because it sounds like you have 3 things to talk about.
Yeah. So first one's beads, which I think we've talked about before. And I've realized after getting these 3 things that I do like beads in a very specific way. I thought it was going to be obsoleted by the 2 I got, which were the miso cornflakes and the Qubit Mojave, which I got largely because of your review, Greg.
Had you had the beads in the past?
Yeah. I've had beads since about when it came out.
Yeah. I think all of us had beads at one point, and then independently parted ways with beads for different, one reason or another.
Yeah, and there are 3 different devices. I'll see the miso cornflakes, which was the one that intrigued me, and I ended up getting, and I had a little delay because it came without any buttons, and then they shipped me some when I was overseas, and finally hooked that up. But it's a sampler. It doesn't do like live input processing like Mojave or Beads does, even though you can kind of coax it into that by having the monitoring switch up and changing the gain, but there's no CV control over that. That one is extremely hi-fi. It is the clearest, like it's, when I use that compared to the others, it's like what I remember going from cassette to CD was like, where there's this extreme amount of fidelity. And with Cornflakes, it's really good for like specific harmonic layering tasks. Like if I want to take something and pitch it down in semitones, because it has a quantize setting too, and you can like actually take scale files and you can put whatever scalings you want on there and recall them. It's pretty slick in that way. But it's much more, it's the most straightforward granular option I have. And you know exactly what you're going to get when you can do it. There's CV control over every knob. There's like pitch up and down. There's like a harmonic stuff, and there's a, what's it called, distribution, where you can change how the harmonic stuff is distributed in a kind of random way, which makes for some interesting melodic experiments.
But so it's still operating on a grain level though?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're going to, it's got this record and playback buttons on it. You're going to take any input, hit record, and then you're going to hit playback, and it's going to give you a version of that back pretty quickly. It puts it into internal memory, and it's really quick at recalling that. And it'll play back immediately, like the thing that you had on there. And at that point, you'll probably turn down the monitoring switch to take off your source or leave it up. But it's a sampler. It's always, you're going to be taking these chunks, and then it's going to break it up, and there's a size thing and a position. And so that's how you kind of manipulate these grains, which sounds fantastic for a lot of things. Like I really had a good session with it last night and love the quality of it. And what you can do harmonically, and like for layering drones, I really love it. I think it shines for that for me.
So where does it fail? Like it sounds like there's a but at the end of that sentence.
It's not as good So I'll go to beads, and I think the strongest thing that beads is good at is taking like a little bit of audio, and like in my mind, it's always like this piece of plastic that you're breaking up into these little chunks, and you get a gun that you can shoot these little shards out with. I think it's what it excels at, is taking a little bit and then blasting it out at high rate. I don't think Mojave does that as cleanly in my mind, even though it's way more experimental. It's like it adds all this harmonic shit you can't do with beads. It's a little, the sound is sandier. I know that sounds weird, but that's the whole Mojave thing, is like dude was hearing like bits of sand hit glass in this place he was staying at in the desert. That's kind of what inspired the module. You can't get as clean of like just taking these chunks and blasting them out, but you can break them up in a way that they are like cloudier, and you can arrange these, like there's like a gust control. And as Greg taught me, like if you go fully left, that's your feedback control for the grains, which is really easy to do on beads and hard to do on other things like getting pure feedback. Mojave, you can kind of do it, but you have to make sure all the other controls are zeroed. Otherwise, you're going to get something that's not what you expect when you blast those grains out. It's, in my mind, the most experimental of them all. There are controls on there that are labeled a little oddly that you might not know what they are at first, but they're generally like shape of the grains controls. You get a lot of the typical controls you do with beads, but the way it handles it and the different modes it gets you into that deal with like pitched grains and things go a little beyond that. So,
is it versatile? Because it sounds like he had an idea for, or they had an idea for what they wanted to do, and it was this sand on glass. Are you limited to that, or can you break out and do other stuff with it?
You can do more vanilla stuff. Mm-hmm. I still think beads is like the easiest way to hear like the clear, like, oh, this is the most basic granular effect I can expect. Mojave lets you get more experimental with it. You can still dial it in, but it's one too I'm still like getting used to. I think I have a pretty good handle on Cornflakes because it's so limited in a sense. And beads and Mojave are both a little darker, even though I think Mojave's higher quality than beads. Beads is like the darkest in my mind.
And how would you compare all of these to something like, say, like Clouds or Monsoon?
Ooh, good question. It's been a while since I've had either, but those were the muddiest of all of them from what I remember. Like those were more like playing in mud, and these are more like playing with these bits of like really small broken up things. Clouds always felt muddier to me, but maybe it was my knowledge of like Granular at the time too. But I like running them into each other too, and like using them for what they're good at. In my modular right now, it's a lot about like effects in stereo and chaining stereo and doing stuff like that, and a lot of Granular, obviously. But it's heavy on effects processing because of what I'm doing with some of the other equipment in the studio. I will say Mojave is the best at doing rhythmic shit by far. I will take a drum out of the individual outs of the analog rhythm and route it into there. And that's like when I can get like the IDM shit that's super synced, which is where bead seems to fail. When you clock it, like it's kind of on with the tempo sync stuff, but Mojave's like dead on rhythmically to the point where I think you and I were talking about this a little, Greg, like running drums into Mojave is pretty fucking incredible. Nice. So that's what it shines at for me, is more the smaller sounds. Like Cornflakes is like the bigger textures and layered harmonic stuff.
Drones and ambient. That's where it would shine in. Yeah.
The quality you get when you pitch stuff down on there, like Piston Honda pitching it down with Cornflakes, is like sick as fuck. And then beads is more when I just want this like basic blast effect, which I don't often want, but it's unique in its own right. I thought it was out the door for a while. And there are a lot of things I don't like about beads, and to be honest, a lot of the mutable stuff in general. But it still like holds up. And especially now that I'm like playing with grains a lot, I like having all three there.
I was going to ask, that was my next question, was have they all earned a spot in your rack? Okay.
Definitely. Because I thought one was going to leave, and I had to like shuffle around a little more to make room for the second effects aid. I mentioned last time that effects aid Pro sounding different than the regular one. I still think for that one firmware it does for some reason, but I'm using the hell out of the Pro lately as a reverb, and I quite like it. It's awesome.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with Mojave and Arbhar, the Instro Arbhar.
I still want to try that one.
I felt very similar to how you're describing Cornflakes. Like it was great as a sampler because it doesn't do live processing, but it was cool to sample things into it and then pitch shift it, and it could even harmonically quantize.
Hmm.
And I noticed I was getting like really good results doing drone stuff with it. But that wasn't what I was looking for.
Right.
Like even with the new V2 firmware, I feel like it improved it a lot since I last had an Arbhar, which was back in 2019 when it first came
Wow.
out. It seems like a really good improvement, but still, it's just like I don't like granular effects that require you to record a sample into it, and then you're only manipulating the sample. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
So how are you using? What are you using it for?
I'm not now. I sold it and I
Oh.
bought Mojave.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And I'm liking it a lot more.
How are you using Mojave that's different than like Nick might be?
I'm not entirely sure. I'm definitely using it to do rhythmic things, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Like, so Mojave's neat in that it has a stochastic
Mhm.
rhythmic engine
Yeah.
built into it, which none of these other granular
Very good point.
do. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so like you can find some neat little happy accidents in there.
Mhm.
I think in my notes here I jotted it down saying that like when it comes to Mojave, you're taking a back seat and you're kind of letting it do its thing.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, you're kind of giving it some guidelines to
Mhm.
follow, but it's kind of like a self-driving car, you know?
Can you like a touring machine where you can lock in and then it can become repeatable?
Mhm.
Can you do that with Mojave, or is it like you turn it on and you don't know what you're gonna get?
I feel like you don't know what you're going to get, but once you find something that you enjoy, once it takes you to a place that you're happy with,
Mhm.
you can kind of lock it in and further adjust. Like it has 2 locks on it, one for the input and one for the output. So you can kind of lock what's going into it and lock what's coming out of it, and you can CV both of these. I jotted down here the stats. A Mojave has 12 knobs, 7 buttons, and I think 20 ins and outs.
Yeah.
In that
it's a lot.
little package.
Holy
Yeah.
shit! Yeah.
And that's part of my complaint with it. too.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. So like he said, like some of the labels have like nonsense names,
Mhm.
like whirl and drift.
Mhm.
And those are the ones that are labeled. Only half of them actually have a name.
Yeah.
The other half are just unlabeled.
I fucking love that.
I don't.
That is, I'm a huge fan of no label shit, because there's a difference between like coming up with like a dumb name or a cutesy name versus there's just no name. Where you like
That's fair.
this, I'm a huge fan of that approach.
I kind of hate it because I have to constantly reference the manual now.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Just to
same.
know what I'm doing. And I hate manuals, Dave.
I know you do.
It's the type of thing where it's so bad. Like I love the module, but yeah, the interface is a bit much there. So I want to just like print up a big colored printout of like what everything is,
Or
and
like an
slap
old
it on
style
the
like
wall.
label maker.
You wouldn't even be able to fit them on there. Like I think that's why there's no labels on some of these on the panel, because it's that cramped.
Oh.
You can't fit a fucking label on some of
Oh.
And
these.
some of them are above the jacks. Like the mix one is the one on the left, but it's still like the one above Gen and Tap. I'm like always trying to remember what the hell they do.
Yeah, it's really neat module, but yeah, you kind of got to let Jesus take the fucking wheel,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and or constantly reference the manual.
Mhm.
At least there's no shift button that I know of.
Yeah,
You can get into the modes with the, what is
and
it?
there is on Arbhar, and that was kind of driving me crazy too.
Yeah, I
is that
can't
there was a
find
lot
that.
of shift functionality built into this new firmware.
You hit that one button and it changes the color of the dunes. And I
Yes.
forget, that's the different types of pitch quantize, I think, or
Yes.
something with that. Yeah.
Mm,
So at least there's a correlation there that I'm starting to remember, because otherwise it would be kind of dicey.
I think it's major, minor, pentatonic, and off.
I think so.
Or something like that. Yeah, I forget. I've just kind of had it on minor.
Yeah, there you go. That's minor life.
Yeah. But yeah, no shift options on the Mojave. Whereas like
Thank God.
the Arbhar, there's plenty. And they even changed how some of the things on the expander works in the new firmware too, that like, unless you're studying the manual for the new update, you're not going to know this. But they did release a video that explains all of this. It's 3 hours and 14 minutes long.
Holy shit!
I watched the whole fucking thing. And couldn't remember by the end of it some of the shit I learned already at the beginning.
Was there a quiz at the end that you failed?
There should have been, because yeah, it's rough, man.
Jeez.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think the Arbhar sounds excellent. Like you're saying, it's the highest, fiest granular thing I've ever played with.
Right.
It, like compared to Clouds, which I still have 2 of in my rack, night and day audio quality difference, you know. But yeah, I don't like the fact that you're only manipulating sample data, and it's just very deep to do not a whole lot of functionality. Or like I feel like the Mojave does a whole lot of other things that the Arbhar doesn't do, but it's a lot easier to get there, and you don't have to remember shift functions and all this. So
that's why I didn't go for the Arbhar, because I was tempted to grab yours at that one point, but I was like, I'm not familiar with Instruo. It was a little intimidating. I'm still curious to try it, but I'm kind of glad I didn't at this point.
My cousin is the same. I was just talking to him about Mojave, but he said he was more intrigued by the few sound samples I sent him of the Arbhar.
Yeah.
He says he feels like that's more his speed because he does want to do long, drawn out, like melodic drone material. That's what he wants from a granular module. And I'm like, well, yeah, like I feel like Arbhar is probably, you know, what you want. It's just so much money too. Like I was able to resell it for what I paid for it pretty much, and I was able to get the Mojave and still had some change left over.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm much happier with the results I'm getting out of Mojave. And kind of like you're saying, I'm pairing it up with Clouds right now too, so I can granulize my grains.
Yeah, it's a nice thing to be able to chain those and kind of use the best of all of it.
Yeah, honestly, I've been giving thought to maybe even picking up a second Mojave.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I think having 2 in there would be fun with 2 Clouds.
Yeah. For rhythmic duties alone, I could understand it too. Having 2 different like rhythmic things coming out of it.
Right.
That would be fun.
I don't want to say just rhythmic as in like drums, but it does neat little sequences too. It can do like crazy little like arpeggiations and trills and stuff, which is cool. I've kind of gotten similar things out of Clouds and Beads in the past, but only when you're hitting it with the proper CV and sequences. You know, this kind of does it on its own in a way that I find very usable.
Yeah.
It's very musical, is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I had some people question me why I didn't get like more visually oriented things like that. What is that? Tasty Chips GR1? Is that one?
So I hated that thing.
Oh, did you have that?
Very briefly last year. Yeah.
It didn't look like fun to me.
It wasn't.
I don't know why.
Again, like I kind of can't stand. You're working with a sample.
Yeah.
I like it to be live processing because I have a lot of weird things going on that are kind of like live and generative, and I want my effects to be based off of the source. I don't want to have to just, you know, record a 10-second sample of that, and that's all you're allowed to work with now.
Yeah.
It just feels like, I mean, that's my problem with samples in general. That's why I don't tend to use them. It always feels like dead audio to me.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Did you fuck with Borderlands much? Have you tried it on
No.
iPad? That's like the main iPad granular app. And I tried it because I was waiting for my Miso. Didn't have the buttons, and I didn't have a way to get around that yet. And I don't know. There's something about visually doing granular that I don't like. Like, I think it's a trick. You don't need to see it. You want to hear it. There's nothing to do with the visual in a way, unless you're trying to go to the position on a waveform. And that's, I don't know. Borderlands was not fun for me. I paid like the $20 or whatever to get it, and I used it like once and was like,
at least you're only out $20.
Yeah.
Whereas like the Tasty Chips GR1 was like the least fun granular device I've ever messed with, and it was like $1,000 or something.
So.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Because I always see Mick Harris use it in those videos. He's always using that thing. And I've gotten to know the sound of it a little through that too, enough to be like, I don't want that.
No, and it I know the firmware has been updated since I last had one and things like that, but it felt unfinished to me and clunky and not worth $1,000 personally.
I'm a little curious. You have clouds or like monsoon?
Monsoon.
Okay. I just didn't know you were saying clouds, and I was like,
I mean, they are, I think I use like the OG clouds stuff in it more than anything. But yeah, it is monsoon, so it's got the Parasite firmware and all that in there.
And all of the extra inputs and controls.
Yes.
Is the big thing. Yeah. No, I was just curious. I didn't know where you're at.
And I use clouds a lot in VCV rack also.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that was in there. Is there granular stuff that's in VCV that's not in physical hardware?
None that I've messed with, I don't think.
Okay.
I in fact, with most things in VCV, I try to stick with things that there is a hardware version of or that I've owned or used or am curious about. Yeah, like there's Supercell in there from shit. My having a brain for
Does
it.
the panels. Yeah.
Grayscale.
Grayscale.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Grayscale, Supercell is in there. Eats up a lot of CPU compared to the stock
I bet.
clouds, but it's pretty nice to have that in there.
Just seems like VCV Rack would be the perfect host for someone with some weird ideas about granular processing to
I know I've
flesh out an
tried a
idea.
few, and I wasn't so into them.
Gotcha.
Whereas clouds, I know like the back of my hands at this point, so
yeah.
I just stick with that.
I always liked Granulator 2, now 3 in Ableton 2, which is a Robert Henke device. That was actually my favorite, only grain thing I liked up until this point, where I got these modules. That one's good.
I did not fuck with a lot of Ableton synth engines.
It's
that
like one of the only Max for Live things I would fuck with, other than the thing that turned your screen black, which I don't use anymore.
Wait, what?
It was just black. You would hit like a space bar and it would just show you the transport and like the time, and then black the screen, which I loved a lot at a certain point. When I was just recording, I was like, I don't want this fucking thing on.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Show me the time.
That's really clever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a nice one.
So whoever predicted that specifically, I mean, I think we all agreed, but somebody had that kernel of an idea, and whoever it was,
I'll take credit for it.
Yeah.
Wow, you just,
I think that was you.
you just jumped right out that. Yeah, you know, there's no prize or anything. Like,
Oh.
you don't win anything.
Bummer.
Yeah, you look really disappointed.
I never win anything.
No.
It's a fun thing to try to use in a way that you think somebody might not be able to immediately know. It's just like some cheese granular thing.
Yeah.
It's really like I'm really enjoying it more than I expected to. Grains. All because of some crazy fucking experience in Japan that I had that like flipped me out.
Do you want to talk about your trip in any way?
Yeah. Not in super depth, but I will say that at least the impetus of the whole granular thing was being at Keninji Temple in Kyoto, Japan, which is a very, very beautiful place. It's a place, it's the oldest Zen monastery in Kyoto. It was built in like 1500 or 1520 by Isai, the monk, who was the one who brought both tea cultivation and Chan, then turned into Zen Buddhism, to Japan. So a very famous monk helped build this place, and like there's like a classic like picture or painting of Bodhidharma that's there that like I saw it and it was like being like shocked. But walking around, it's one of the two main temples that has the, you know, vanicured sand areas that have like circular sand around trees and things. It's not the biggest one, which is Ryojan-ki, or I think I said that right. But it's the one that we went to, which was kind of near the ryokan that we stayed at. And walking in there and hearing, you walk on these boards and you're supposed to be pretty quiet. And they're kind of like, they do a gut check before they let you in. And I had to like say some stuff in Japanese to like convince the dude to be like, okay, you're good.
Wow.
Cause he was like, you gonna be all right? And I was like, oh, wakarimasu. Like, yeah, I was like, yeah, I understand. And he was like, he smiled at me and like just waved us in then. But it's very quiet. You can't take pictures of a lot of it. There are areas that you can take pictures of, but the monastery is like, has these boards around everything, almost like a boardwalk that you use to navigate. And it creaks in these like very minuscule and small ways. And all you can hear is everybody kind of creaking in this 3D way around this place. And then these birds that are there also make a very similar sound. And I tried to record this and I got like a good recording of it, but not one that I would use. But since that moment, I was thinking about how I would reproduce that sound. And I was like, oh, glad I have that granular module, because it like started to trickle off all these ideas. But there were certain points in that temple where I was just staring at certain things, just like crying, and especially looking at the one area that you couldn't take pictures, which almost looked like a mummified version of one of the monks. It like really had a strange power to it. And I was hearing like these like weird roaring sounds in my head the whole time. And it like, I still like haven't left that experience behind quite. But yeah, temples. I will go see a temple fucking anywhere in the world. There was another temple we went to in Taiwan, and New Taiwan, Sengsha. Our awesome tour guide, Mr. Zhang, who's like one of the sweetest humans ever, took us there to get like these bullhorn snacks, which are like a traditional thing. And it's known for like that area, traditional Chinese medicine. We got this like drink that helps with cold, and it both like helped our throat things that we were dealing with a little bit. But there's this old temple there, and there's like a tiger gate and a dragon gate. You enter through the dragon gate and you exit through the tiger gate, the right side to the left side. And you go in there and light your incense and make an offering. And there are certain parts in there that just, I don't know, there's a certain power in those places, and everyone just being very reverent of the spot. Like that place fucked me up too. Not as much as Keninji did, but it was still like something about it really affected me aesthetically with audio. And I've been like holding on to those ideas since. But yeah, Taiwan is amazing. It's definitely my favorite country in the world. It was the sleeper hit over Japan for that trip. Yeah, beautiful country with lots of plants, art everywhere, and has lapped us multiple times technologically. I mean, any microprocessor you're getting is coming from Taiwan generally. Yeah, it's crazy. I think it's a very misunderstood country in some ways. As my partner Steph has said multiple times, most people think you're talking about Thailand when you refer to it, or people just think, oh yeah, scooters and like sneakers come from there. I'm like, yeah, that's like a fraction of it. There is a lot of scooter culture there, which is really cool. But yeah, beautiful country. My God, it's gorgeous. They really respect nature a lot more than we do here. Definitely something that I took away from that.
I mean, we set a pretty low bar for respecting nature, so
to say the least. In a transit system that destroys any other transit system I've used in my life. It makes New York look like a torturous joke with their subway system.
I find that very interesting that you're like trying to replicate some nature sounds, because it's kind of been where I've been going since Seattle.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, after spending some time on the mountains and shit out there, I kind of had a sound in my head out there that I've been trying to duplicate since. The new shit that I've been working on for the album was originally going to be like very focused on my time in virtual reality. And that's what I was trying to make, is like trying to make those experiences and memories into sound. And now I'm still trying to do that, but I want to layer it with also sounds of nature so that it's like both. It's a very bipolar album that I'm working on, but it's taking like weird digital virtual reality inspired sounds, and I'm blending it with like sounds that I'm trying to create from memory from being on the mountains and in the woods and shit. And it's like weird, but I think it's working, and I think I'm getting there finally.
That's awesome.
I think that was the missing element, was trying to do too much digital and virtual reality-ness was just kind of making it sound not, I don't know, organic enough, if that makes any sense.
It does make sense.
So yeah, I've been trying to figure out how to blend the two with each track, and like combining it with like organic sounding textures and soundscapes with like very much digital FM percussion and drum shit. It's like, yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, I thought I was almost like kidding myself about the concept until last night when I sat down and was able to replicate like two of the aspects of this. And I was like, no, like just keep going. Like you got it kind of thing. I was like, I was losing a little faith, or I was just like, what am I thinking about? And then I like touched on it. I'm like, no, you know exactly what you're doing. Just like keep doing it.
Yeah. I like how you mentioned the birds too. That's actually how Cyrus got into modular.
Oh, really?
Because he loves the sound of birds, and he's been trying to figure out how to synthesize bird-like sounds.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And
great
like,
sounds.
yeah, Granular, and recording actual bird song into like his OP1 and running that through Granular stuff and things like that. He's kind of getting close to what he was trying to do.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah. And I think that actually came from his trip to Japan when he was there. I think that's one of the things that he took away from it as well. That's kind of neat to hear you say that.
Taiwan has a lot more, and some of them are quote unquote invasive, like birds. And we saw some insane birds there. I forget the one, but you'd hear crazy bird sounds that you're not used to everywhere. It's a very humid, like almost quasi-tropical environment, which I like a lot. Like it was mid-70s when we were there the whole time.
And then there's Dave.
Then there's me.
He hates nature.
Nature's fine. Just, I just don't know that much about it. I don't hang out with it too much.
You don't chill with Sasquatch on the weekend?
No, I mean...
Rave with Chupacabra?
If there was a rave that was Chupacabra themed, I would attend that.
What have you been hanging out with over there?
Let's talk about Elmyra. So
Curious about this.
I was asked recently to perform, and it was they were looking for like a live drone or ambient, maybe a little on the noisy side of things. We kind of briefly touched on this last episode where you were talking about, I think, Strega.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, ooh, have you looked at Elmyra 2 from Neutral
yes.
Labs? Because this was around that time. I looked into it. I was intrigued by its concept, but also that it was a kit. So it was like, okay, if I make this kit, I won't be out a lot of money if I don't like it. So I'll cut to the review. I fucking love it. It's fucking amazing, especially for what I wanted it to be, which is a 4-voice drone machine. If you're going to try to use it for anything else, it's probably not going to fit the bill as a sort of standard voice, or just trying to use some of the oscillators independently. I'm not going to tell you how to live, but I'm telling you, don't try it with this machine. It is, there's an idea behind it that is very oriented towards drone and ambient, and just long layered sounds on top of each other with slow growing changes, and it fucking excels at it. So it's takes up a lot of rack space. You can also get like a little standalone thing to make a little box out of it, which I got. Frankly, it's the little box thing it's like a 3D printed thing.
Oh yeah,
it's kind of shitty.
Not getting you excited to sit it in there. No,
I don't have a lot of complaints, but that is one of them. Don't bother with that. Go straight. Just go for the Eurorack version and put it in a case. It's 4-voice. Oh, and the build itself, fucking amazing. Like, super easy. Like, it was an afternoon. It said like 2 to 3 hours. It really was 2 to 3 hours. It was
all through hole.
All through hole.
Cool.
There's only like 1 or 2 things where like you got to do it in a specific order, but like it's all spelled out. Really, no complaints about the build. And if you're even like beginner or intermediate, I think you could handle this build.
What was the price difference between a kit or a factory build?
Oh, it's
pretty big, right?
It's pretty substantial. Well, and I also got it through Thonk, so I think it's on the order of like over $100 difference. Like, because this was before it started, the built one started showing up recently, and like Perfect Circuit, I think, has them for like 5 something.
Okay.
And I paid like €240 for the kit, and that's even with the clunky box. So it could have even been cheaper if I didn't go that route.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty substantial difference. Like, it's even, I think it's probably like even a little bit wider than the normal kit and built module difference. I mean, at its cost from Perfect Circuit, which I don't know what it is. I think it's like 5 something. I still think it's worth it. Like, I think it does a lot.
Nice.
It's 4-voice. There's 2 LFOs, and there's like a little section for attenuator and mult. That, you know, if this was the only thing you were using for like a live set or a drone set, you could just use this. I didn't. I had a bunch of other stuff going on, but like, it really is that versatile.
Yeah.
And there's a filter. I'll get into this a little bit later. You can change the type. There's this weird little sequencer, and everything I'm about to say, like as far as like any changes you make, are not persisted. When you start it up, it's back to where it was. So I think it's kind of emphasizing the jam live performance element of it. Like, change things and experiment, do crazy stuff. You're not saving anything anyway. You're starting from scratch, which can also be a little bit of a downside if you did want to like turn this on for a live set and have a preset. You don't. You have ended up not being a big deal. There's a delay that can be synced, which it sounds fine. The thing that I think it gives it a lot of the character is this ouch circuit, which is kind of a dumb name. It's a wave shaper, distortion circuit, and filter sort of all in one. And there's the I think it's, what is it, choke and the bite knob are the 2 main controls for this.
Kinky.
Yes, it is. It has a huge impact on it. Yeah. And there's a little tiny expansion thing at the top that takes like raw components, or like a little board with raw components on it. Like, you can use ICs, but there's a little disclaimer that's like, this is probably going to screw things up if you try to use anything other than like resistors and capacitors and that sort of thing. But those have huge impacts on this ouch circuit. And there's external in that like basically gets mixed with these 4 voices and goes through this ouch circuit. It's fucking awesome. The voices themselves can either be triggered by the gate, but the gate is not like a real gate. So there's like this EG, it's an envelope, and it's one knob where you control both the attack and decay.
Mhm.
So they're not separate. The thing is, like, there's also these pressure pads, and then when you push down on the pressure pad, it starts the envelope, and it goes up and then it goes down. The gate doesn't just trigger it on and off. It's depending on how much voltage you send, it simulates that much pressure. So if you send like 1 volt into it, it will be like a light touch. Or if you send 5 volts, it's like you slam down on it, but it's still going through the envelope setting that you have for that voice.
Gotcha.
And even if there's a mode that you just turn that voice on, so it's just droning the whole time. You can still press on the pad. There's an output with that envelope. You can use it for other things. So that's still active, even though it's droning. There's a ton of these modulation algorithms, and then you can apply them either individually or to all of the voices, and then how much it affects is a separate parameter.
Oh, weird.
There's 4 these pages of wave tables, and there's a control to go sort of through them. All those are CVable, and there's a chromatic on and off. The sequencer itself is it captures tones. You either tap tempo or have a clock in, and if you have recorded a sequence, and you hit play, it'll just start going through them. But it will be tempo synced to this, and it's just going through those tones.
Any clock division on that?
No, it is very rudimentary. Okay. It's and I think it's designed to be like slow ass gates.
Right. That's what I was thinking. Like, that's why I was wondering if there was a divider, because it seems to be like how you're describing it, like catering to drones and long, slow, textures. So you'd think you'd want to be able to divide that down.
That would make
very
sense.
Slow clock,
I think maybe they're either wanting you asking you to do that division ahead of time, or tap something in real slow.
Right.
So for the set, I had everything running at like between 72 and 74 BPM. I just tapped that in, and it was handling it very gracefully, and sonically, it sounds fucking great. All of the wavetables they're thick. The mixer that's taking in all of these different voices never gets sort of like muddy or overloaded, even if you're just sending a bunch of this like low end stuff, even high end things like getting like weird little high end textures all sound fucking great. Now the downsides. When you if you want to go into a drone mode, you have to hit the page selector and you hold it down for 2 seconds, and then it goes into drone mode. There's no indicator that you're in it. So you can easily kind of forget, like, one of these is droning. Fuck, I forget which one it is.
Yeah.
If I was involved in the QA for this ahead of time, I would have been like, please just put a fucking
throw an LED
on it. I ended up basically for this set being like, okay, channel 2 is the only one that I'm going to do this on. That way, if I did know something was droning, it was that one. Yeah. I'd like to have a little bit more flexibility. I shouldn't have to do like a little gimmick like that. The advanced mode for all of this stuff, I wouldn't say they fucked up, but I think this might be a deal breaker for some people. Like the default for the filter, to change it, you've got to hold down that mod P, enter in a code of these buttons, and like that will change it. And there's no indicator that you've done it. Like that's
dicey.
Yeah. And so something else I'm going to talk about is there's an update to this that I haven't put on it yet because I was, I had everything ready to go for this set. I don't want to fuck with things, before this set. They just added more shit that's in this advanced mode. So there's even more codes, and like they have like a full sheet for it. That's the only thing I can say that is like disappointing about it. Everything else, fucking great. Like it really worked for this.
It's like Game Genie.
Yeah.
Yes. Only, in Game Genie, you could see the numbers and letters that you were putting in.
Yeah.
You don't have that.
Gotcha.
Like you're just hitting up, down, down, up, down, right. Wait, up, down,
down, left,
left, right, select star.
BA select.
Yeah.
BA select star.
We all fucked it up.
Yeah.
Well, Greg didn't.
I used to have this on a shirt.
Mm-hmm.
I should have known this. Greg, you got it. Well, you win this one
And
too.
it's select start if you're trying to do 2-player with 99 lives each.
In Contra?
Yeah.
In any case, it's a lot more like that. If you fuck it up, you don't really even know if you fucked it up or not. Thankfully, a lot of the defaults, they're great the way they are. Like I think the defaults make sense. But if you do want to get into those, you got to like start it up and hopefully you hit the right combination of things. Yeah. Even just like the different modulation types that they have, those are colors, and there's like 10 of them. Or about 10 of them, and they've added more. Those are color based. So like violet is, detune, and the other one's like sub oscillator. But like the white one is noise. It was a little bit like, did I want light green or did I want dark green?
Yeah.
That was also a little
because nobody's colorblind either.
Exactly. Yeah, and it was just like, this is like, I get that you had your head in this and you know all of this because you've been working on it for a year. People just picking this up don't actually know that. So, but I'm still going to overall give it an enthusiastic thumbs up. I still think it's a great machine for drones and ambient and just making lovely sounds.
But have you tried? I can't even do it with a straight face. Never mind.
No, you got to try it now.
I was gonna say, but have you tried to make noise Strega? But like, yeah, I started to crack up before I could even say it.
Yeah,
I couldn't.
I can't compare it to a Strega. No. Yeah.
Fuck Strega.
This came out of the Strega desires, though, or at least that conversation, it seemed. Because I remember I just looked over at Discord once, and you were like, Elmyra too, and I was like, oh, I'd never heard of that before, and you were like, no, this is what a Strega could be. Yeah.
I every once in a while, I still look at like Thonk and just like, what kits do you have? Because even if it's something I'm not necessarily fired up for at the moment, like if they've got a good sale on a cheap kit, maybe someday I'll make that. Like so I've
done that a lot.
This pops up a lot on there, and that's what I kept looking at for a while, and then the show ended up being the impetus for me to finally fucking do it. So, because the other part of the thing I was doing for the show was my Deluge was in the shop, getting the OLED upgrade, and then had to get sent back. But in any case, I ended up having to use a Polyend tracker. So I just recorded a bunch of real long like drones from my modular and other places, recorded it into the tracker and just sequenced those. So unlike a normal like tracker, like where it's going like super fast and there's like all the lights are blinking and it's fucking IDM break core, this was like a way of using a tracker that is not, I imagine, very common. That's 72 cool. BPM, real long sample, so like it's just hitting on the first note and then that's it.
Love it.
It worked out really well. We talked about this earlier. I don't like a lot of the stereo separation and the stereo tricks to make it not seem like mono.
Well, you're in luck because it's not in the Mini, and I was actually sad.
What?
My Tracker Mini doesn't have any of those stereo.
Really?
Yeah. None of the stuff from the OG Tracker. It doesn't have the stereo effects. Yeah. I mean, I guess because it is stereo.
You don't have to fake it.
But still, like, I liked those effects in there, and I would like to use them even with stereo stuff or some stuff that's not in stereo in there. I was a little bummed to see that those weren't included.
It's weird. I would just assume they would have been in there.
So did I.
Yeah. Well, I compensated for what I don't like about the original Tracker with a Death by Audio Rooms pedal. Also, enthusiastic thumbs up. Really, really dug it.
Yeah.
Stereo in, stereo out. End up just using just the bass Rooms algorithm.
That's why I sold mine. I liked it a lot, but I found like I was only using the basic Rooms algorithm, and I was like, meh. So I ended up. That's what I sold and got the Cloudburst for instead.
Oh, gotcha.
It was a little cheaper, and I don't know. It just kind of fit what I needed more than the rooms did. But
That makes sense.
I did like the rooms. I love grimy reverbs, and I feel like that one can get pretty fucking grimy when you want it to.
Yeah.
It's got amazing headroom
Oh, absolutely.
on the amps. Yeah, it's kind of, it can get dirty and neat.
Yeah.
But,
I didn't realize that you had sold it for that.
yeah, I was like, if I'm going to have a reverb pedal, I want it to be, I wanted something bigger.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like something that could do a bigger space.
Yeah.
To go along with my gen loss.
I actually kind of wanted something really simple for this particular thing that I was using it for, because I was looking at all of these big Strymon and Empress and like, and there's, reverb pedal shootouts and listening to all of them. I'm like, these are awesome, but what I want for this show, this drone show in a basement in Pittsburgh, I just want a pedal that does this really well, small, tiny little footprint and big giant.
I meant big as in big space.
Oh, gotcha.
Not necessarily big pedal.
Oh, I thought you meant like big options and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to trim that down because like the rooms had a bunch of options, but I wasn't using them. So
Right.
I liked how Cloudburst is like one algorithm. That's all you get.
Yeah.
But it can be a big one. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I found that a bit more appealing. Nick, you just got a reverb pedal.
Almost.
Oh.
I was going to
Oh.
take a delivery of an Empress reverb that I got used for a very good price today. Because I've been playing more with reverb in general and what I've been doing with the modular. And actually, I'm using the modular to process another synthesizer a lot right now, which I could talk about too, because that was the impetus for the reverb overall.
Seems like a perfect segue. That was smooth as shit. Let's just roll right in.
So that synthesizer being one I didn't necessarily expect to get, which was something I purchased while in a Sheetz parking lot coming back from Dulles on the way back from this trip in Japan. So this is the Waldorf M desktop synthesizer, which is something I looked at and was like, oh, that looks interesting. It's very expensive. And it was at the time until I realized a little trick that some friends taught me in that I don't know if this is selling very well. I think it's like $2,200 retail or $2,400. But if you go on the Reverb account for Korg USA and you wish list theirs, which is like at $1,600, they will send you an offer for $1,300 and $1,350. And I counted and I said, how about $1,200? And 20 hours later, they said, you're on.
No shit.
And I pulled over into the Sheetz parking lot and greedily checked out on this thing, which was now half price. The impetus for this came from the Mineral Chord Discord to some extent, with people who had picked this synth up and said, no, this is like the fucking wavetable synth. This is like the Waldorf synth we've all kind of wanted. This is, most people on this board have had a Blofeld, including me, like 3 times and sold it eventually because it's a fucking Blofeld, right? It can do some shit, but it's not the shit. This is like, in my mind, the ultimate Waldorf synth I've always wanted in a number of ways. It is meant to be a rehash of the Microwave 1 and the Microwave XT to some extent. At that point, they've even ported some of the bit code over from the Microwave 1 into this, exactly as it was for some of the wavetable generation.
Nice.
So it's actually mostly analog, though. Outside of these 8-bit or 16-bit wavetables, everything past that is analog. You get a SSI, the new one, 2144 filter designed by Dave Rossum. And you get 2 stereo, like you get a stereo VCA as well. It's an 8-voice synth. They actually sell an expansion now, so you can add another 8. I might do that someday. I'm very happy with it just being 8-voice right now. But you can load your own wavetables into it. You can take wave edit ones now and put it in there. It will interpolate those wavetables or not. I find myself always being in the 8-bit mode and not the 16-bit, because when you pitch those fuckers down, it sounds like nothing I've ever really heard before. It even has me looking at the Piston Honda 3, and I was like, oh, I might get rid of you because I don't know if I'll ever use you to some extent. And I definitely won't open up the wavetables on the Virus TI again, because this is like ultimate wavetable. I will just sit there and twist the little red inner knob and scan through the wavetables and get like very satisfying sounds. But to loop it back to the modular a little bit, it doesn't have any effects on board, which actually I think was a great choice, because the Waldorf synths were never really known for having good effects. They would toss on some half-ass reverb or delay that didn't sync very well, and you were meant to deal with that on the Blofeld. On this, I still like, you can play a chord on this, and I play it with the Hapax all the time, and it just sounds ridiculous to me. It is like, as people have described it, it's like the best of 80s wavetable shit. It's incredibly rich. I don't know. It's just endless sweet spots to me, and I love playing it a lot. The person who developed it, there's the only gear source thread I've really paid attention to, and I've read at this point all 254 pages of it, because the developer's talking through the whole time, talking about every choice that was made along the way, every bug people find. Like, it's at the point now in the 1.09 operating system where it's pretty much all free from bugs, except for the LFOs need to be redone. So there's a thing actually in the display that causes the LFOs to drift if you sync them to clock. I'm generally not ever syncing this synth to clock because it's not something I think of when I program it. Another cool thing is it's very simple in a way. There's only 2 LFOs and a global LFO, and then you get 4 envelopes, but they're kind of like Yamaha DX style time and level envelopes, which are very fun. You get 2 of those to control like the wavetable position, and you can freely route that stuff around.
Is there any CV inputs like on the Iridium?
No okay. CV at all on the compared to the Iridium. No CV in or out. That's one thing they could have added. I would not have been mad at it, but I'm still like viewing this thing as like, all right, I'm just going to use you for what you can do.
Sure.
Because you're very capable in that way. It's got an arpeggiator, which seems to be pretty blown out, but I haven't touched it too much. One of the things, there's some interesting design choices. Like there's no battery in it because they didn't want to add to batteries in the environment. So actually, if you want to remember what patch you were on, you have to put the SD card in. And that was actually a hack. And so when you turn it back on, when you have turned it off, it'll remember which patch you were at. They didn't want to write that to the internal memory because they're very conscious of if we make certain changes to write to the internal RAM, it'll mean this thing will last you 3.5 years of use instead of 10 years of like daily use. So there's been a lot of interesting design choices along the way. One of the most beautiful synths I've ever used. It's big. And that also means it's really fucking nice to program. Like you don't have to dive too much in the menus. I think maybe the only Waldorf other than a Microwave One that doesn't have a mod matrix, and that was by design. And this is the thing a lot of people don't like about the M, is that if you have a complex patch, you're going to have to go to each destination and you kind of assign the targets there. So you go to filter and you say, all right, I'm going to pick LFO 1 or 2 and assign it to this parameter within filter. So if you want to figure out how a patch is constructed, you kind of got to go to each part.
And you could maybe have something that's causing an effect on your sound that you forgot that you made that assignment.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to dig into those. You don't get an overall mod matrix. But to be honest, like, I know generally what I think I'm hearing and have been able to dig in and be like, all right, that's an LFO changing this parameter, or this wavetable is being changed, or this envelope is going like very high and doing this shit. But man, I would say it's probably my favorite synth I've ever used at this point, like sonically or just usability wise. Like I fucking love it.
So what kind of stuff are you making with it? Is it more like low end bass stuff or melodic stuff, or like where is it fitting in your tracks?
Good question. Right now it's a lot of melodic stuff, but that also involves a lot of low end. What I'm really liking is taking the M and running it into the modular and granularizing it with all these grain modules, but also applying like multiple effects aids and mimeophone onto it to serve as the effects. Because at first I was like, oh, I'm going to have to use like my external hardware effects. And then I was like, I'm just going to run it into the modular. I've got all these beautiful knobbed out effects, and that's like so satisfying. The whole thing with the Empress was like, all right, I'm so satisfied with these effects aid effects, and people keep telling me how much better the Empress Reverb is than the effects aid. I found one used for like $200 off, and I'm like, I'm going to try this thing as like an end of chain effect to see if it's that much better. Because I'm looking for like very spatial things right now. I want like 3-dimensional drones. I also got like a jumble henge that I'm using to like help facilitate some of that. Like I'm thinking about sound in a sculptural way right now for part of this project that I'm working on, which is morphing a little bit to encapsulate a lot of the things I've done over the time making music, which I'm pretty happy about. But from the most part, it's about like sound sculpture and how, not to be too cheesy, but like positional sound without using like Atmos or surround or something else. Like how deep and interesting can I make some of these things? So that is what I'm loving it for. I'm using it as like, there aren't even too many oscillators in this rig. There's a piston Honda and then an E352 in the skiff. But obviously I'm pretty wavetable centric right now. And this is just the main sound source for everything. But it's also so good at like these like, what in my mind are like electro type sounds that I'm like getting more into making like electro break stuff a little bit to like complement some of this. Not to give, I don't want to talk too much about what I'm working on, but it's been inspiring a little change of stuff because I'd put beats away for a while for a number of reasons. And I'm like kind of getting a little back into that now because of the Mojave and how good it is rhythmically. And the Rhythm 1.7 update, which I won't talk about yet, but is also pretty significant.
Nice.
But yeah, the Waldorf M is that's the trick is, you know, wish list one from Korg USA on Reverb and then lowball them down to 1200 and they'll go for it.
That's
I think
wild.
they're trying to get rid of these.
Yeah.
That's a cool trick.
So listeners should jump on this.
Yeah, while it's still there.
Yeah.
Giving you the SysEx dumpster insider advantage.
Yeah, as it was passed on to me, because if you know, I would have not gone for a synth that started with a 2 for sure, and was not like was in the mood of like I have an OB6 and all this other shit, and I don't know. I immediately sold my Micro Freak I had, or the Mini Freak, the Poly from Arturia. I just shipped that out last week because I was like, I'll never touch this again.
Is that the one with the dice and the peppers?
Yeah. Well, that was the Poly version of the Dice and Peppers one they put out, which I hadn't used in a little anyway. Still really cool synth, but completely obsoleted by. I just don't have much interest in even programming something other than the M right now. It's like that much fun for me.
Does the M have any like random patch generation?
Yes. They have a good way of kind of randomizing individual sections that they took out at one point, and then people wanted it back in so much that they were like, yeah, please put that back
So you can get high and just jam on the random button?
Kind of like Rainmaker style.
Yeah.
Or Hydrosynth style.
Yeah.
Okay. You're selling me on this, Nick.
Yeah, I liked it. Like, I was having a conversation with Gabo about Hydrosynth differences, and people are like, why the Hydrosynth on paper? And it's like, no, they're completely different. To be honest, I like really didn't like the Hydrosynth, and I never even made, I don't think, one good patch with it. But the M, it just keeps on giving for me. It's all about like the ability to kind of, I've never had anything that sounded that good on a wavetable level, even though I've tried so much of what exists out there.
Right.
And I guess people also like that, what is it? Third groove synthesis. There's like the PPG wave type keyboard thing.
Yeah.
That's the other one people compare this to often in these threads. I forget the name of it. Groove synthesis third wave thing. I think it's something like that. I fucked it up. But also like very expensive synth that treads the same PPG territory. But man, yeah, it's kind of like just nailed it for me. I'm so glad I took that weird leap because it was the end of already a trip to Japan. I'm like, I'm just throwing it on the pile. I'll figure it out later. I'll sell what I have to. And that's kind of what I've been doing is I've already just parted ways with a few other things and other modules that I'm like, I don't need you anymore.
Another great decision that happened in a Sheetz parking lot.
Seriously.
Yeah.
See, a Waldorf M. Don't sleep on that one. And a lot of people were like, why didn't you get an Iridium or anything? And that's like,
that's what I've been eyeballing for the last few months, especially when they announced the core version. I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
I keep window shopping it and watching demos and was trying to feel it out. I never even considered the M really until you started talking about it. I forgot it even existed.
I hadn't either. I thought it was some throwback thing that was like clunky, steppy PPG wavetable sounds.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want that.
That's kind of what I thought. I was like, okay, this... I remember when it was announced, I thought the same thing. I was like, clearly this is just going to be a throwback to, you know, and for anything cutting edge, it's going to be focused on Iridium, right?
Right.
So I just kind of, I don't know, put it out of mind.
Yeah. A lot of people will compare this, and whether it's fair or not, they'll be like, yeah, the Iridium sounds like a plug-in compared to this synth.
Really?
But, you know, I've had Rudiman telling me like every month now, be like, well, do you have an Iridium yet? You know, it's crazy because it does granular, it does FM in crazy ways. But like, I really like that they didn't throw a million LFOs on this thing. It's kind of like, it doesn't take too long to figure out how to run it, honestly.
It's just pure wavetable fun, basically.
It's just like the thing is so rich that you're like, I will listen to it dry with no effects. And that is not often that I will sit and listen to a synth dry without
I feel like
something.
Piston Honda is one of the only wavetables that I'll do
Honda.
that with.
Yep.
You know? Yeah.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's got a lot of motion that you can put into it. The VCAs are very nice. It sounds great to me. There's something special. And you can tell, like, in that thread on Gear Sources, like, the creator of it uses it a lot. He's already, I think, he's a contractor now for Waldorf. He left for reasons, even though they still renewed his contract to fix this last LFO thing. But he's already maybe working on the N and not the M, just to, like, further put some of his ideas into it. So it's interesting. It's fucking great synth.
Wow. And yeah, that's awesome because it's probably under a lot of people's radar.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully you've shed some light on this.
Yeah, I slept on it entirely until a few people hipped me to it.
Well, I think we've all been entirely too positive so far in this episode.
Oh, no. Are we going there already?
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to Electro Corner yet, if that's what you mean.
No, I thought the other thing.
Or Elektron Korner.
I
So there's two things on my list that are kind of
You're right. Wow,
rant-worthy.
you got two different spicy contents.
Yeah,
get
one is
into it.
actually... I fell down a rabbit hole last night, dude.
Oh, shit. I know where this is going.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
This all came because I wanted to complain a bit about the Polyend Play Plus, which seems to not be being very well received by the gear community.
Yeah, for reasons.
Not only is it not being well received, but it is pretty much responsible for killing Ben Jordan's influencer career.
Yeah.
And I wanted to touch on that a bit too. But yeah, since our last episode, Polyend Play Plus came out.
Not even a year after the original, right?
Barely. I think it was a year and a half-ish.
And the exact same form factor.
Exact
Yeah.
same form factor. And it was the exact same price, which was acceptable if they wouldn't have pulled the rug out from under all current Play owners by cutting the value of their current machine in half overnight, making it now a $400 machine.
Oh, did they do that on the retail price of the OG?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
With
I
the-
missed that.
With
part.
the announcement of the Play Plus. They're like, hey, guess what? We got a Play Plus. And everyone's like, cool. And they're like, it's not a firmware update. You can buy Play Plus for $800 new, or you can buy a Play for now $400, which means anyone who currently has a Play has to either take a massive loss if they want to try to sell it, or, flip it and get a Play Plus.
And there was no upgrade path for existing Play users. The Deluge OLED, I saw that being compared a lot of like, okay, the new Deluges are going to be this. They're going to have the OLED. If this is the new Play, is there a path where I can give you $100 to add? Because there's a hardware difference, but there was no option for like turning a Play into a Play Plus. If you had it, you just simply had the old outdated hardware, full stop.
But then they changed that quickly.
Yes.
Because people were pissed.
But that was that was the original, like, day one, they thought this was a good idea.
Oh,
Right.
I didn't know that.
So by like day 2, they did offer a path.
Yeah.
For an additional $400 now, you can send in your Play back to them plus shipping and taxes and get a Play Plus. So now you're spending $1,200 on this platform for something not really worth $1,200 in my opinion. So you're either going to take a massive loss or you're going to have to sink an extra $400 into this. So not really a good option no matter how you slice it.
And this is really disappointing to me because I'm actually a huge fan of the two option thing. And I think like the tracker, I'm on board with that. There is the cheap OG tracker that doesn't have the new bells and whistles. That's still out there. If that meets your needs, you get that. There's the mini that has all the new cool stuff.
Which I just got.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to shit talk Polyend or nothing.
Exactly.
Like,
And
I
think,
still like the tracker.
And
both versions.
I love that idea of having, again, for me, it's the new Photoshop versus the old one. If I get the old Photoshop for cheap, I'm just going to get that. I don't need the new stuff. What they did with Play is not the move.
It's a fucking mess.
Yeah.
And I think they fucked it up very bad.
But they had a cheerleader.
They have a cheerleader. Their secret marketing cheerleader. Ben Jordan put out a video like the next day talking about what a great deal this is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And there was even like a weird like environmentalist angle he was pushing too.
It's less hardware use now because you're sending in the original shell, so there's less waste because they're putting in a new board. You're not just junking this thing like you would say like the newest iPhone, and then you pitch the old iPhone. This is it's an environmentally sound,
but it's also kind of
an arrogant fucking.
It's also omitting the idea that like that original one has a board that being tossed. You're still tossing that out.
Right.
They're just doing here, throw this out for me.
No, there's no good way to cut it, in my opinion. It's a fucking mess, and people that have bought a play within the last year or so are getting fucked in one form or another. And have Ben Jordan kind of like try to hype this up, kind of blew up in his face. I feel like.
Damn, he did try his best though.
He tried.
Like, it was
he tried
just
to spin it,
and it was like the charm offensive. It was just like, oh, the video was just like chef kiss his fingers. He did he put everything into making this just seem like the best idea, and it was.
Oh my god!
I'm weirdly indifferent to him. I think I'm watching a dude talk for a while, but even during that video, I'm like, this is the first time my skin is crawling while listening to him. Like, this just feels dirty. Like, I am being sold a bill of goods that are just not lining up.
Snake oil.
Yeah. It was
felt
the first
like a
time
snake oil sales pitch. It
and
really
why,
did. Because he's not so secretly a business partner with them. You know what I mean? Like, he's never really like tried to hide that, but he's never straight up said it either. And that's the slimy part, is that like all of his videos regarding Polyend products have been a sleek commercial.
Yeah, very much so.
The
ones I've seen.
And everyone has always, I think, been okay with it to some degree, because usually he's pimping products that people are excited for.
Yeah.
I don't think he anticipated the blowback from the community that came with the Play Plus release. And
it was a bad idea, and that's the problem. Is like he then was the face of it.
Yeah,
like that cuts both ways. You don't get to be the face of a product everyone loves,
right?
But you're also the face of the product that they fucked up on. Like, it's a double-edged sword. Yeah.
So then 2 days later, he kind of had a fall on his sword and announced that he's stepping down as a influencer and will no longer be doing gear review videos. And he didn't ever really state that it was because of people not enjoying his Polyend Play Plus commercial. But the timing of it was like, undeniable.
He did post a lot of the vitriol he was getting. He did post a lot of I'm getting threats, and but it was also incredibly one-sided.
As I was just going to say, he did cherry pick some negative comments, which that is what started my rabbit hole adventure last night, because I wanted to see just what negative shit he was getting and what, in what way.
These people didn't come out of a vacuum.
They didn't come out of the woodwork just because of the Play Plus. No.
Right.
And I mean, anyone who puts themselves out on the internet is going to get negative comments and trolls, right?
We do.
Yeah. Everyone does.
I don't know why we do, because we're perfect.
Right. So I found it strange that all of a sudden 2 days later, after he failed in selling the Play Plus to everyone as a great idea, now all of a sudden he cared about toxic comments. And said that the community, quote unquote, he said community is toxic as fuck. And that was his reasoning for no longer doing gear reviews. And it's like, so I looked through the history. He's been getting negative comments forever. From the start, as any internet personality or streamer will. And so I find it weird that all of a sudden now he cares about it, and it's getting to him and so much that he has to step down. It's like, no, you finally couldn't sell something that you were trying to sell, and it blew up in your face, and you got called out for being a shill.
Well, and I think the other problem too is he goes to such lengths to pretend he's not a shill. If he was just simply like, hey, listen, I got paid to do a product demo.
Right.
And I am a professional. I will show you it, and I will do a good job at it. Like, just be upfront about it. I think it would just be like, okay, I will go look at that video to see what the play can do. Like, just the fact that he spends so much time in the beginning of all of these videos talking about his the purity of his intentions, and how I think there's something about like talking out of two sides of your mouth when he does these videos, and put it out there, man. Just put your cards on the table. You got paid to do this. You're doing a product demo. There's a reason this is day one and your video is the one that just popped up. Like, just stop with the pretense that this is from your heart. You wouldn't be dealing with this kind of fallout.
Well, that's why I was curious, like, why did it hit so hard now? And that's what led me down a rabbit hole of the last 7 months, where apparently he was involved in like a old school style flame war,
where he joined the Dirty Wave Discord. To like, it didn't sound like necessarily he went there to stir up shit, but he didn't get the like hero's welcome he was expecting, and then immediately just turned to shit.
And he ended up telling some people to suck his dick, apparently, in their Discord.
One of them a non-male user apparently too, which is never like a cool way to go.
So that I guess there was blowback from that, which none of us were aware of any of this drama. So I guess a lot of people are angry at him already because of that stuff. And like, I guess he never really apologized, or then he did apologize, but then he rescinded his apology, and Sweetwater said they weren't going to work with him anymore. And he told Sweetwater to also suck his dick.
Oh, geez.
So like, he just kind of dug the hole deeper. I guess this has been building up over the last 7 months between like his brands and other brands. And the thing is, like, Dirty Wave is a direct competitor to Polyend. They both make mobile little trackers. Ben clearly is a shill for Polyend, so like him going into his competitor's Discord and telling them to suck his dick, not a good look, dude. So yeah, apparently none of this was mentioned either in his like, oh, I'm stepping down,
these comments came out of nowhere.
Right. He just wanted to point the finger at the community for being toxic, but the more I dug into it, the more it became apparent that he's actually a source for a lot of toxicity over the last 7 months. And if not toxicity, at least arrogance. And
I feel like he's fallen for a little bit of main character syndrome. Like
exactly. I didn't want to say that term in my notes, but I kept thinking it. Because I feel like that term gets tossed around a lot, like Karen and stuff. In ways that it doesn't really.
I mean, the other way I was thinking,
I would say yes.
Or like prima donna. There's something that's just switched at some point, because not that I would ever call him humble, but I feel like he didn't have this level of just like throwing weight around arrogance. It was always just like, it was arrogant, but like in a cute video to like start infiltrating competitors' discords and stirring up shit.
Because of some hunch that they leaked the Polyend thing too. Which is like,
just a hunch, like, and even if they did, like,
if
you're not, as you claim, a business partner with Polyend, why the fuck do you care so much?
You're supposed to be so neutral.
So that was wild.
So you stopped because retailers actually said they wouldn't work with you until this legal shit was all sorted out, was the real reason.
Well, and the other thing too is like, he's been real adamant recently. He did this whole thing about like the breakdown of his career a couple months ago, and he contends that the main source of his income is his Discord and his Patreon, and like the money he gets from that. I think there's a little bit of that maybe that needs revisited when it's basically slowly being revealed that like you had these other relationships and other partnerships, and like so that whole video was just really just a lie to get more people to support you via your Patreon, because you've convinced them that that's how you're making a living. Is that even remotely true?
It's there was a lot of mention about that video in particular that I saw when I was digging up some of this dirt last night.
The one him talking about his
where he's breaks down his finances and things like that. And I remember watching that at the time, but I didn't give a whole lot of thought about it. And I think we discussed it ever so briefly in an episode too at that time. But yeah, a lot of people were pointing out how that in itself was just a slick 30-minute commercial for his Patreon. Exactly. I didn't even connect those dots at the time, but it basically was kind of interesting.
I'm curious to see where he goes from here, because he still, like, even like within the last couple of days, he did another
gear review for
2
pedals. 2 days after saying he was stepping down.
And I was like, wait,
and it was such a biased review video.
The thumbnail for it has a bunch of pedals, and he's like, what's the best reverb pedal? I thought it was gonna be like head to head. Like, it was literally just like, these are all the pedals I looked at, and here's the one that I picked, and then just goes into a gear review. I'm like, well, that was just misleading as well.
If you're curious, it was the Maris Polymoon.
Oh, see, because I watched his Empress reverb pedal review because it was like a very glowing review, and it goes in like it's not a terrible review, but so it was the Maris one.
Well, I think Empress didn't line his pockets as much as Maris these days.
Hey.
And now all of a sudden, Maris
Clearly.
Polymoon is the best reverb according to Ben Jordan.
I'm getting strong George Santos vibes. Like, the dude just can't fucking tell the truth. Like, I don't believe a word you say anymore.
Oh my god.
But he even says it in a video that, like, you know, he used to think that the Empress was the best, and now this has usurped it or something like that. But yeah, I don't know, man.
That's funny.
A pedal that just came out like what, a month ago or
Yeah.
something. It's like suddenly that's the best out of all these other pedals. Like, I don't know. And he doesn't even really go into detail as to why he feels it's the best. Like, in what context is it better than an Empress or, you know, anything?
Well, there was a lot of, like, there was a weird heavy technical component to that, which also was like, I get it, but like, we don't necessarily have, that's not how we evaluate gear necessarily.
Yeah.
Like, it's not this technical purity, or it's not being like, oh, because of this line of code is actually why I like it. Does this sound better or doesn't it? Like, I think to dive into very dry technical elements in order to make your point kind of almost undermines it. Well, I could have looked at if you want me to just do a code review.
Well, the funny thing,
we could just do that.
He started to do that, and then in like more words or less, he was like, "But this is too technical for you guys."
Yeah,
and then he like stops. He starts showing like some of these weird like sine wave analysis through the reverb shit, and then being like, "Well, this is too complicated for the layman, so I'm not going to get into that." But it just sounds better at best. It's like, okay,
God.
It was,
which would have floated if it wasn't 2 days after he fucking announced that he wasn't going to be doing any more fucking gear reviews. And his justification was that he, you know, was in contact with Maris or something, and they had sent this over for a review before he made that video, and he would feel it would be dick move to do it. It's like, no, you had an obligation that you needed to fulfill. Right. Like, clearly.
Wow.
But yeah. But honestly, I never really enjoyed his gear review videos anyways.
No.
I always felt his strongest content was the more interesting things, like the video about sound wave weapons and fucking going into a cave and doing like, you know, reverb impulses for convolution verb and shit like that. Like, I thought those were interesting.
I think his meta videos about the music industry, I think that like some of those are like, if somebody wants to ask me why I've got a problem with Spotify, you could just send them that video. Like, that would be one of the cases you can make, is like, hey, listen, here's someone who has broken it down. Those are his strengths, I think. And he's an incredible video editor, and he's, again, charming dude. I think there were strengths, and he just stepped way outside those and kind of just wandered into a minefield.
Yeah.
Because of the old Play Plus.
Oh, God.
Which I have to say, like, if you're getting into $1,200 for that device, there's better alternatives at that point. You know what I mean? And I feel like he did not dip into that at all. He just wanted to talk about how great this upgrade path was. And I'm like, really? Like, for $1,200, you're in like Octatrack territory, or like 2 Deluges or something at that point. You know what I mean? Like, or an MPC or something. Like, I don't know. You're kind of stepping into a different ballpark there with that price.
There are options.
So I don't know. It was just very, very shilly, and it blew up in his fucking face. And he just did the old cop out where, you're all too toxic, I'm taking my ball and going home. You know, like, come on. Seen it a million times.
I think we can all just be glad he didn't end it with and you can suck my dick. So.
I'll give a shitty mini review. It's not super shitty, but the Versio line from Noise Engineering, I don't really like those too much in the end. I think I talked about them last time when it was running the M through it, that made me realize like there's some muddiness within those that's hard to escape. Like there's a character to it that you can't take off. And as soon as I heard it, it was like I couldn't unhear it. And I tried every firmware, and I was like, oh, I don't like any of these actually.
That was kind of what I got out of it when I had the Versios as well, the Reverb one. I don't want to say dark because I do tend to like dark reverbs.
Same.
But muddy is, I would say there's
Yeah.
some muddiness there. You lose some clarity. Things get kind of jumbled in the mid range there.
Exactly. That was exactly it. Like losing clarity in that mid-range jumble.
Yep.
I was like, oh, I can't like process this in a way that satisfies me. Actually, like the effects aid sounds like incredibly better to me.
Yeah.
Whereas I liked some of the ideas behind like immature and like bunching up the delays and shit like that. I eventually realized I couldn't get like just a clean delay that would represent the source that well. It was always so clouded by what it was trying to do. On the other end, I think the new version of the BIA is awesome, and I love that a lot. And I'm glad to have that back.
Is that where you're using the BIA firmware?
Okay. Yep. Yeah, I bought it as a, what is it, Dable?
That's what I was going to ask. Like, are you?
Which is cool.
Yeah.
You would like that. I think to your point, it was like some FME stuff.
It's the Bell, right?
Dable. Yeah.
Okay.
But I ended up putting the BIA back on it and haven't gone back since. Just because I like it. Yeah. I like the pitch controller too. It's got the Elektron like push down more, move it more kind of thing. It's a rotary, which is kind of weird for pitch.
I hate that.
You hate it?
I hate it.
Yeah.
That was one of the things I hated when they started doing it.
The Synthtuber had that.
And the Templeggio.
And the Manus.
Yeah.
The BIA was one of the only ones that still had the old school, like non-rotary, which I really liked. I hate rotary, especially when it comes to pitch.
I have a Templeggio, and I really like it. It doesn't bother me because it has like the push for fine. You can change the two different chords versus fine.
I remember I bitched about it on an old episode whenever the Manus came out, and I was hoping that wasn't going to be the direction they go in the future, but clearly it is.
Yeah.
I didn't know
like
that one.
Rotary.
I thought the older ones didn't have the like push for course or whatever.
Synthtuber was the first one I had that, where it was it would change the light, and then it was still one rotary for it, but you would switch between coarse and fine.
That was the small one, right?
Yeah.
I remember that one. Yeah, it was push for fine or no, it was push for coarse, right?
You swap, you switch,
toggle.
It toggled between them, and it would change the light from red to green.
Gotcha.
I don't mind that. I like having it better when it's just like a knob with a indicator, let you know where it is, but also like keep spinning until you find it.
Yeah, I don't like it. I feel like I just get lost in spinning and shit. Like you can't do muscle memory spots for pitch.
Oh,
that's
that's true.
what I like to do.
That's true.
Yeah,
and that's a big thing for me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't know why it's a big thing for me. It just
I get it.
No,
it's nice to be able to know
Yeah.
you're going to go to that range pretty quickly.
Do we dare dip into Elektron Korner?
Yeah.
I mean, before we get into Elektron Korner, I will say that someone generously lended me a Riddim Mark 1, but based on the aforementioned show that I was talking about from last week, I have not gotten around to using it, nor have I upgraded any of the millions of things that I need to upgrade that have had really exciting updates, like in the last couple of weeks, but I didn't want to fuck around and before a show. So letting everyone know that next time I will probably be talking about the new Riddim update. Very excited to dive into that. Even the Elmyra 2, which I just talked about, was the original firmware. Haven't updated that. The Zermixa has a new update that looks pretty exciting. And finally, the one that I'm probably going to have a lot of words about is the new Deluge community update. It's gone open source, and a bunch of people contributed a lot of interesting ideas. And they finally had an official, not official, but it's like as official as it's going to get for an open source community contributed project. All of that is now available in an update. I'm very excited to dive into all of these things. I just didn't get to it yet. So get off my fucking back, everyone. I'll get around to it.
I'm
you hear
curious.
that? Everyone send Dave an email. Tell him to get on this.
I'm curious how they'll handle the community update aspect, and if they're like fold stuff into the main like branch, or if they're gonna just like let those two coexist, or what?
Is it gonna be like the Linux kernel where they've got like these sort of, anyone can submit but needs approved?
Cool.
I don't know. I mean, so far it seems like it's going well. It hasn't gotten out of control.
The list of changes seems insane.
It's
rad.
I get a very strong vibe that this is a lot of people that were like always wanted this on their Deluge, and then the second it became open source, immediately just started coding it, and then this is that immediate conversion of all of those people that were like, I've always wanted to do this, and now we all have 20 new things that our Deluge can do. So
That's right.
very excited for that. But so yes, before we go into Elektron Korner, I'm saying both. I didn't update any of my shit yet, and I don't have any comments on the Rhythm, even though I have one at my house now. So I'm kind of in the Elektron Korner, but I'm kind of like standing outside.
And also, before we get in Elektron Korner, gotta remind everyone, we have a Patreon, and if you want to hop in it and tell us to suck your dick, you can do it for $5 a month. The price of a cup of coffee. You can join our Discord, our budding community of
Miscreants,
yeah,
malcontents.
Oh, and also in announcements and cleanup relating to the Discord, Joe Soso, you're banned. We will send you formal documentation.
Yeah.
We won't be doing anything to ban you. You should ban yourself because that would be putting work on us. Thanks for misleading Dave on a module.
In full disclosure, Joe Soso, you're not. That's not true.
It's not true.
Yeah, no. You. We'll get into that later, if even at all this episode.
No, actually, it sent Joe a drink koozie.
Oh, did you?
Rolling papers the other week.
Oh, fantastic.
Because he was one of the people that reached out and said, yeah, I would like one of those.
That's
I was
awesome.
giving a mini airdrop. So respect to you, Joe Soso. You are clearly our best Patreon member. We would never ban you.
Yes.
Except we just did.
We just did. But again, remember, this is all bark, no bite.
Yeah. But spiritually, we banned you. But physically, no. You're the best member.
Or were, because now you're gone.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
I will remember you.
Oh my God. Ooh, it's one way to start the Elektron Korner.
Fuck.
Yeah, Rhythm 1.7.
Yeah, I did not expect it after a number of years of no updates, and I was on the beta team at that point during the last update before, which was like 1.37b or some shit like that. And then when I was in Taiwan, unable to sleep one night, I looked up and was like, what the fuck?
I was wondering why, like, you didn't give any heads up about that. I was like, well, I'm kind of surprised Nick didn't even give, like, on the slide, like, hey, guess what? There's something coming from Rhythm. Like, yeah, I thought maybe you'd have had a hand in that or something.
I think they dismantled that old team. So I know there are people who were beta testing it, or they just got sick of me talking my shit on here, which they probably never hear. But yeah, I was shocked to see that and surprised, especially since I had to kind of like put the drum machines away for a while to work on some other stuff, and immediately got it back out and updated when I came back. There's like a 2.5 hour update process where you like has to, tune everything. So there's like better tuning now. I would say right off the rip, the Euclidean stuff is like, could have just done that and it would have been a complete mind blow. But then they added 2 more machines, the SID and the Syntax synth one. I was always like, whatever on the Syntax synth one when I had it. Still a great addition and some new flavors, but I like the SID one a lot.
The SID alone is going to get me to buy a Rhythm again.
I love it.
Wow.
Like, yeah, because like, I loved the SID station shit from back in the day, and I think I've said many times by now, huge Tarnbread fan, and all his stuff is very Commodore-ish and was built
Literally made a
on a SID
record
station,
based on the chip.
Yeah. And I've always loved that sound, and I could get some of the sounds out of the mono machine in that way.
Yeah.
Never did I expect them to bring over like that to the Rhythm.
No.
Which is an analog machine. And they're doing this all with analog waveforms.
Or digital. I don't know. They have some digital going on in there.
I was trying to figure that out. I believe all the waveforms are digital. Or I'm sorry, all the waveforms are analog.
Oh, wow.
The noises are digital.
Oh, no
Oh.
shit. Okay.
If I understood correctly.
Wouldn't surprise me.
So that's some fucking cool trickery they got going on there. And it's like, I know I just recently resold my Rhythm because I wasn't using it a whole lot. And I'm kind of like going back into the box for most drum duties. That machine alone is enough to tilt me back in favor of the Rhythm. Like, I really want that.
It's fun too.
Yeah.
Having tried it now a little bit, that one in particular. Because again, like when I was in Asia, as well as having Young Thug stuck in my head for too long, like electro sounds and like these really bright like city like rolls, you know the sound, were kind of like ripping through my head for some reason, and that one's been hoping to get there like better than anything else I've ever had, even the sandwich Sid from days of yore,
which I still have and still use.
Oh,
Do you
nice.
really still have a
Yeah.
sandwich?
It's still plugged in.
I wonder
I
where
fucking
mine
love it.
is.
For some reason, I thought you got rid of that years ago.
No, I still have it. I still use it pretty regularly. I don't take it out of the house. Like it's not in a live set, but
Right.
it's just that case is just a little.
Oh yeah.
It's not great. But sonically and usability wise, it's still great.
Yeah, I've yet to see like any great demos of these new machines being, utilized.
Not too much.
But
I've seen people dick with the Euclidean quite a bit, and the Euclidean stuff is a very satisfying addition because I'm often trying to like make non-repeating drums in there using different track lengths and shit like that. What they also added some new parameters to they added BD acoustic and SD acoustic. I haven't played with those too much. They sound like really nice additions, extra machines.
Sounded good in the
tuning
YouTube videos.
changes. Yeah, there's some OS things that they tightened up just overall visually. That's like, okay, this makes a lot more sense. The way you pick machines, like they really polished that thing up, and it's close to 10 years old now.
And the tuning now has actual note values.
Yeah, note value tuning on
Yeah.
the things, which is really cool. Like, yeah, they really took my favorite thing and made it even better, to the fact that it's now out in this little like setup I have. Because all I have right now is I have the rhythm. To the left of that is the M, and then I have my 7U case and then the skiff, and that's it. It runs into my audio interface, and that's what I deal with right now. And I'm really, really happy with that setup and don't intend to change it for a while. It gets the job done for me.
So this is a really positive Elektron Korner we're having here.
They did something right for a change.
Now on the other end, there's fucking put the digi shits in silver boxes type thing that they just pulled before that for the anniversary. Like, no,
Anniversary
with that.
edition. Yeah.
Like, so you didn't have some paint on a case and you're going to try to like sell that to people for more money when you don't, like, come on.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I forgot all about that. I remember I was on vacation. I think that was in West Virginia or something at the time when that dropped. And I picked up my phone for the first time, and that was like the first thing I saw. And I just set my phone right back down. I was like, nope.
Yeah, I saw it and was like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, that was about
kind
what
of
I
thing.
said, I think, as I set my phone down.
And then 2 weeks later, boom. It's like, oh shit. Now I'm wondering what they're going to do with the Analog 4, if anything, if they have any tricks up their sleeve.
Yeah.
If there's any room in there. It seems like now, based on what they're saying, that the rhythm is now like, all right, it's full in the Octatrack way, and that there's no more code space to deal with. Same with the M too. There's actually no more code space, so it's kind of like we're locking this down, and it's never going to change after this.
So I had two thoughts when I saw that they were bringing that SID machine in. I'm like, either this is a feeler. They're testing to see, testing the waters, maybe, see if people really give that much of a shit about a machine that can, do that, to the point where maybe they'll release a new product, fingers crossed, for like a new mono machine.
Yeah.
That would be
amazing.
In the form factor of a rhythm. That would be a blend of like SID station stuff and mono machine stuff.
Yeah, because I thought you were leaning up to ask to say SID station.
I feel like a SID station alone wouldn't be enough to justify a whole new device.
Agreed.
Right.
So I feel like they would have to merge it with something,
Gotcha.
and probably some sort of existing Elektron product, which the only thing they haven't dug out of the grave yet is the mono machine.
Yeah.
So if they had a new box that was the form factor of a rhythm and could do both, like just all out digital insanity. You got your rhythm now that does everything analog that you want, or your analog, A4 if you want all your analog synth stuff. Digital isn't covered yet in that form factor. I think that would be a great opportunity for them to release a box that was like SID station and mono machine machines crammed into
and
that.
machine drum. Like do the Elektron Classic like thing. That would be, you want to make some money? Like, yeah. That would do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of been like my dream machine for a while, something that would merge some shit like that. And when the Syntact was originally announced, I thought maybe it would be that way, but no. I don't like those little boxes and that form factor.
Which you'd be like insane in my mind to get one of those now over a Rhythm Mark 1, given that it would be like $300 less and also has like a billion more fucking features over a Syntact.
That's what surprised me too. Is like usually, it usually seems like Elektron doesn't want to compete with their own products. Yeah. They want you to buy them all. But I feel like this latest update of Rhythm really makes it stand out over everything else that they have. Like it definitely has solidified it as like, I feel like the flagship product. You know, is it as popular as a drum machine still? No, but I think it's getting close in like, you know, awesome functionality and popularity. So yeah, I was thinking either it's a feeler for that or total opposite. We'll never have something like that. This is it. This is close. We're going to get this little SID machine, which can do a lot. So I don't know. We'll see. I guess time will tell.
Yeah, it's hard to say with them because even they took on some sampling features that were in the Digitact only, and I think now even the Rhythm like covers all the Digitact sampling stuff because they added you can do like perfect loops now or have it sample for like 12 steps and it'll be like dead on or something like that. So they really like went all out. It's impressive.
We got our boy Ricky representing.
Oh Ricky back in the mix.
So I also did not know that Ricky was like worked for them.
Yeah.
And so when I was like, oh, very excited about this, and I clicked, I'm like, the fuck is this shit?
Because he made mention at one point of like being let go from Elektron, and it's caused a mini controversy, at least on Reddit. And people were like, what happened? And of course, he probably had some NDA, which he couldn't say shit about it. And then magically, he was starting to demo shit from them again.
Fuck, I didn't know he even had any relationship with them at all.
He's no data line. That's for sure. That's for sure.
No, he ain't.
I think that's it for Elektron Korner.
Yeah.
So are we now leaving the Elektron Korner?
Yeah, let's get the fuck out of Elektron Korner.
Get the fuck out of here.
Someone want to do a little tune to take us out?
No, we only do a tune to get in.
Oh, we missed that. We missed that. Okay, never mind.
We forgot to do that last episode.
The ship has sailed.
Our editor, I'll tell you.
Really bad at it.
Oh, I forgot to mention, because we got kind of wrapped up with on the Ben drama.
Oh, yeah.
What the Polyend Play Plus actually brought to the table.
Oh, yeah.
That got buried.
Is it stereo, right?
Stereo functionality, kind of like the Tracker Mini now introduces, but also a synth engine, which we've talked about from the jump that, you know, all these Polyend devices should have. Like when the first Tracker was announced, you know, all of us were like, yeah, this is great, but it'd be cool if there was a synth engine, and, you know, which I still stand by. Like I have a Tracker Mini now, and I can't help but think how much better it would be if it had like an FM drum engine in there. But yeah, so they finally did this with one of their products. The Play Plus has 4 different synth machines that you can, you know, mess with and not just sample now, which I think is cool. Until I read the fine print, the generative functions of the sequencer, which I feel like is the only strong point of a Play, don't work with the synth engines.
So wait, they're just completely like free floating off to the side.
Are you fucking kidding me?
No.
That's brilliant. I fucking love it.
Yeah, you have to just manually punch it in, like sequence it, or use external MIDI.
Is that what the Play Plus Plus is going to do? Like,
I mean, there's speculation that, you know, the firmware is still being ironed out or whatever, so that those features just don't work with the synth engines yet. But yeah, I don't know.
That seems insane.
Why would you bother releasing that without that?
Yeah, yes. I'd rather not have it at that point.
Yeah,
like,
just wait.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
I hope they like get these things in the mail and there's just like a single dip switch they fucking push up to plus mode and ship it back to people, and this has all been nothing.
Plus enabled.
Yeah.
I had not seen that they had a completely disconnected synth engine.
Wow.
Yeah, you don't see much mention of it.
No, because it's a truly terrible idea.
What the fuck?
I forget who mentioned. I think it might have been Loop Hop or something. I watched one video and like towards the very end, they're like, "Oh, and by the way, you know, this generative stuff doesn't work with this yet." And I was like, wait, what? I was like, that's like the only reason to have a play.
Yeah, that's the main draw, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I was like, okay. Yeah. So it just gets better and better with that.
also just makes you think like, why? What limit are you up against that?
Or they just feels half baked. Yeah.
They just think
It's
it's
not there yet. So
That's
again, why fucking release it
Yeah.
if it ain't ready yet? And the play has only been out for roughly a year, so like, why? I don't know.
Take another sprint, my friend. Like, you know, like, get that shit going.
This will not impact your KPIs.
No, maybe they just wanted to release before the holidays type thing. It's probably a lot of pressure for that.
I guess, but is that really a thing in like I mean, I guess people buy shit around this time. I just assumed that like the synthesizer market was immune to that as a.
I always would think so too, because they're too specific and high dollar.
They're too high dollar to be a gift.
Buy,
like that's not a stocking stuffer.
If anything, you might avoid it at that time because you're trying to fucking pay for Christmas shit.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hanukkah or whatever the fuck you're dealing with.
Yeah. You've got other bills to pay around this time. Yeah.
Holiday obligations.
Yes.
Yep.
I just bought myself presents.
Oh, what'd you get?
Or
you're not going to tell yourself until you open them.
No, I'll spill the beans. Next episode, I'll be talking about 3 things, hopefully. Bubble Sound SEM20 stereo filter.
Nice.
I was chatting with Mr. Bubble Sound. I've got a prototype coming my way.
That name sounds fake. I don't think that's a real name.
AKA Mr. Bubble.
It's Buble soon. Mispronouncing me.
I'm excited about that because I've been needing a new stereo filter and I'm not too happy with the options that are out there. What I've really been wanting was a stereo version of the 860 System 80 filter. Because I love that filter and I really wish they had a stereo version of it. I wanted something that was kind of like Roland-ish, but compact and stereo. And then I saw that Bubble Sound said he's very close to being, releasing the SEM20 stereo. And I was like, that is awesome because I loved the original SEM20 from them. Like that, I feel like that filter probably lasted the longest in my case. Like I'm constantly swapping in and out filters, but the SEM20 was like a staple for like a couple of years in my case. Like every Prometheus show where I brought out the modular had the SEM20 in there. That was like a staple. I loved running digital oscillators through that. Like I ran the Piston through it a lot, the 340 Cloud Gen through that a lot. So the fact that there's a stereo version coming out now is, I think, well-timed, and I'm excited to get that. Second thing I got coming is the Chase Bliss Lossy pedal.
Okay. Yeah. That's
which I didn't give a shit about at first when it was announced.
Yeah.
Like I watched a quick demo and I was like, okay, makes everything sound like a bad MP3. Not very interested. And I kind of just disregarded it. But then I got bored the other night and I was just watching pedal demos. And I saw a couple of it that showed off some features I didn't realize was in there. And it's got a lot of interesting spectral stuff, spectral freeze things that it can do. Yeah. And I love spectral freeze stuff, like generally I use my OG clouds in spectral mode to do that, and a couple things in software to do that. So I'm excited about having a pedal that can do that and pair up with my gen loss. I'll have 2 pedals now that are dedicated to sound degradation, one analog tape-ish and one, spectral lossy MP3-ish. So I'm excited to play with that. That should actually be here next week. And then I have an SDKC Instruments helical with expander coming.
What the fuck is that?
I don't know what that is.
So that's kind of some underground shit. It's not even released yet. Got to check one out when I was in Vancouver. They had, I guess, one of the prototypes up there. It's a very strange module. That it's hard to describe. It's wavetable based, and it has its own internal sequencer that you can't really control. You can only kind of lock it. It does weird melodic stuff. I don't even know how to explain it. It's a generative chord-ish melodic texture machine.
Well, you'll have a much better explanation next time
Yeah.
when you actually are using it.
Yeah.
Also, in filter, you never have you ever had a dual dagger before?
Yes.
Yeah. Doesn't I know it's a more clinical thing. Probably
It was
doesn't
too
scratch
clinical
the
for
itch.
me.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
figured.
I did like it as a stereo filter, and that's what I had for a while up until recently. I sold it because I decided it was too clinical.
Yeah.
And now I just don't have a stereo filter.
That's my main stereo filter now because I
Yeah.
have all these stereo things I want to filter, and I like it because
Exactly.
it's clinical and
My-
good for the granular shit.
Almost my entire rig now is stereo.
Right.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
back there again too.
Yeah,
It's funny.
So yeah, I have to
Yeah.
get some stereo filters in there. The stereo SEM 20 is going to be in there soon, and I might give the Qubit Prism another go.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I'd be curious to see what you find there because I'm on my stereo shit again too.
Yeah, I've done some. I guess I haven't mentioned that in the last couple of episodes, but like over the last few months, I've been doing like a restructuring of my rig. Like again, all the
You
drums.
mentioned a couple of things, and
Yeah.
mostly it seemed to be in relationship to VCV rack.
Right.
Yeah, so VCV is starting to handle all of my utility and my
Mhm.
drum stuff again. I've
Yeah.
given up once again on trying to make my modular a drum machine.
Mhm.
It's just too much money
I
involved.
can't believe
to
this
do it.
12th attempt at it failed.
I've tried a few. I feel like every time it gets closer.
Yeah,
but
That's probably the problem.
yeah.
13th time's a charm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
might be.
So no, I've redirected my rig to now kind of be like what you're saying. It's mainly processing, granular stuff, reverb stuff, just effects, mostly all stereo, and a few very bizarre sound sources.
Yeah, that's like
that's all I
exactly
want.
where I'm
Yeah.
at too. Really unique sound sources and a lot of processing.
Yep.
That's been doing it for me. And then enough modulation as I need, to make that fun.
Yep.
Which Pam's Pro does like so much heavy lifting for me now.
Yeah, I'm still relying on the OG PAMs and my marbles. I have 2 of them for modulation. A few other things in there for modulation. But also my ES9, I route a lot of modulation through VCV into the hardware rig. So
Yeah, I do a lot with Hapax now too, because especially this thing I'm working on, the goal was to eventually just take saved Hapax sequences and modulation and point them at the video synth.
Oh, that's cool.
As to like glue it together, because I was like, oh, how am I gonna like make this consistent?
It's a very enticing little preview you just dropped there.
Yeah.
I like where it's heading.
yeah, some stuff to talk about next episode.
Yeah.
Also, I think next episode will be our year in review. So
Probably, yeah.
yeah,
It will be.
this should be the last episode of 2023.
And we're getting close to 50, aren't we?
We are.
Yeah, this
Creeping
was.
up.
I forgot to say at the start, but this is episode 47. So
We're getting
yeah,
there.
we're getting
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, next episode I will talk about Mind Phaser.
Hell yeah.
Because Joe Soso, Patreon user, I did try the 3-body. I liked it. I didn't love it. And I realized I probably didn't give it a fair enough shake because I was comparing it with the quad operator, which is that's just now my main thing. Like it's very hard to it was an unfair comparison, but I made it anyway.
You're never gonna replace your quad operator.
I don't think so. I mean,
That's
even
just Dave the module.
I don't know if I gave it a fair shake.
Right.
I don't want to talk anyone out of getting it if you're interested in it. It made some cool, weird sounds. It's heavy on, phase modulation in addition to these other components to it. It just didn't click with me. And so I was very interested. I've been interested in the Mind Phaser for a long, long time. And so I was like, okay, 3-body, you're out. I'm going to give the Mind Phaser a shot. And my preview is really dig it, especially the low end to the point where, I don't miss the Buchla oscillator now. It was really,
you passed that on?
I did. I really liked it, but
I'm close myself too.
it can only get so sexy.
That's an interesting twist because I recently re-listened to just a part of our year in review last year episode.
Yeah.
You both were talking about how the Buchla was like the top
Mm-hmm.
at that time. Okay.
Yeah.
So it made it about a year.
Yeah.
Now it's
Yeah.
been usurped. Okay.
And I would say if anyone's interested in it, go for it. And if you really do want analog oscillator that can hold the low end really nicely, sounds good,
That's
pull the trigger. It's also not very expensive.
No, for a dual
Fucking go
loss,
for it.
probably
Yeah.
one of the cheapest out there.
I don't go to it that much anymore.
Yeah,
I'm
same.
doing other things. So
It hasn't been in a case for me in a long time.
There's a lot of preview. What's your preview for the next episode?
Fuck if I know. Who can say?
Next episode, Nick has sold everything and become a monk.
Yeah, no, that's like things on the possibility list that could happen.
Yeah.
End a podcast. What the fuck?
You want me to end the podcast?
Let's end it.
You want me to end it?
Let's end it.
Well, I did have one more thing I could talk about. But
Oh, all right. Well,
it's kind of off the cuff. Not really.
I mean,
modular
that's
related.
not off the cuff if you have it wrote down in notes.
Let it rip.
That's not off the cuff.
Skinny puppy.
Mm.
Do we want to dip into that?
But you know what? We talked a lot about it, so let's wrap a bow on this. Yeah,
Okay.
let's do this. So, Skinny Puppy.
Skinny puppy.
So we had talked about the problems with the Skinny Puppy show in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, back earlier this year, May-ish, I think. It was either late April or early May.
Yeah, it was around in the springtime.
Show got canceled. The
And
first ever Skinny Puppy show to get canceled.
so we have that point of pride. I mean, we can
Yeah.
But I think we both agreed on this, that, or at least I may have been a little bit stronger on this. I was convinced they were not going to come back.
I didn't think they were going to come back either.
Like, it was just like, why would they come back? They're obviously getting up there.
Yeah.
It was one show.
Yeah.
It's a bummer, but like the idea of like finishing that tour and coming back just seemed completely out of the realm of possibility to me.
Yeah.
If it was just us, probably it would not have ever happened. But the fact that there was demand for other cities too, that they did a second string, what was it, like 6-7 months later?
Yeah.
I think made it possible enough to work logistically to come through old Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
One last time.
And so it happened.
It did.
They played in Pittsburgh.
They played, and I wept. But
It was fucking great. I really enjoyed it.
I enjoyed their performance. I did not enjoy the crowd.
Really?
Yeah. So I wanted to touch on that. Like, I feel like earlier in the year, at the first attempt,
Yeah.
I felt like there was an energy in there that was just very positive and kind of amazing. And it felt like 40-year-old high school goth reunion. Like, a lot of familiar faces there.
Yeah.
Everyone was like excited to be there. There was a lot of enthusiasm. It just felt like the room was kind of buzzing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know, a lot of that was probably just my own excitement,
Right,
but it
right.
felt like other people were on the level. Like,
Yeah.
when you're on an acid trip and you run into someone else that's tripping,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you just got that telepathic link, and you're just
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's like kind of felt like that through the whole venue, the first attempt. Nothing like that this attempt. In fact, a lot of people seemed kind of miserable and kind of weird, and there was a lot of people from out of town and not a lot of familiar faces this time around.
So could it be something simple as that first one was spring? It was one of the first nice days in a long time.
Yeah,
This time it was rainy, cold,
true.
fucking miserable. I think I'm wondering if
That's just Pittsburgh, man.
right, but I'm just wondering if that was enough to just make everyone's mood a little down.
Maybe.
And there was also probably a little bit of like, maybe people were still a little irked that they had to do this again.
I kind of felt like that was a large part of it. Like, instead of people being excited that it was happening again, there seemed to be a lot of people there that like had this kind of like, you better make this up to me type of vibe. You know what I mean?
Well,
It was like kind of weird.
A lot of people, let's face it, were old, and their fan base is old. I mean, this is the second time a lot of people had to get a babysitter for the night.
Yeah.
Like, we can go to shows without thinking about it because whatever, we just leave the house and go. A lot of people in our age range, just leaving the house is a huge pain in the ass. And to ask them to do it twice, it's silly, but maybe that was enough to make them go, like, keep them from being buzzed with excitement.
At first I thought it was just me too, but then Kevin Key's girlfriend apparently got into a little altercation. She said she got shoved around and punched in the head by people in the crowd who thought she was trying to cut in line. And she described the Pittsburgh crowd as rude and aggressive, which upset me because I know that like 75% of the people there that time were not like Pittsburghers. There were people from outside of Pittsburgh. Some were there from Philly. A lot of people were there from Ohio. Some from New York.
Well, that's the problem with it not being part of the regular tour again. Now this was if you wanted to see them the second time, this was the
Yeah.
closest place to see them
Right.
the second time
Yeah.
for a lot of people. So that does make sense that more out of towners would be at this one.
It just bummed me out that because I feel like the real Pittsburghers there
Yeah.
were not the ones being miserable or shovey or pushy
Right.
or hitty. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like, I don't know. I felt bad for her, and I didn't.
You hate to see,
I didn't want Pittsburgh to get a bad rap.
Right.
Yeah.
Because like first time we were responsible for Ogre getting sick
Right.
and making the first cancellation. Now the second time Kevin Key's partner is getting slapped around. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
You know, but I guess we don't have to worry about them not coming back.
Right, yeah.
'Cause,
As a surprise to no one,
Yeah.
they finally called it quits.
they called it quits, and they said they're officially like splitting up and parting ways.
Yeah.
They're each going to do different projects, but they don't have any intention of ever working with each other again, which kind of bummed me out to read.
Yeah, but that's a long time to be working with someone.
Yeah.
Especially when you start with like when you're young
Yeah.
and you have changed a lot over that time. Honestly, I'm impressed that they lasted to even at like on working terms
Sure.
for as long as they did. Because there were other patches where they weren't working together.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree. It's a little bit of a bummer that, this is the end. But A, it was a long fucking run and a lot of good material. And B, looks like they're both, like everyone involved is going to keep working on music in some way, probably until they die. So, just go check out the other stuff they're doing.
Yeah, I saw in an interview that Kevin Key's going to be working on a soundtrack for I think it was Silent Hill game.
Ooh.
That's what I said. I was like, that's kind of neat. And Ogre's going to be working with Paul Barker on a project.
Very nice.
Yeah,
We did get to see Lead into Gold twice.
we did.
That was a bonus Lead into Gold.
I think the first time around was a little more solid than the second, but I enjoyed it a second time through again. Yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed the sound of the whole show. I really enjoyed the track selection of Skinny Puppy.
Yeah.
Um,
And the theatrics of the stage show
mhm.
was exactly what I wanted. It
Sure.
was that perfect blend of like super well executed, a little goofy, a little hammy.
Mhm.
I'm glad that's the one I got.
It's same because I brought Allison along, who wasn't very familiar with Skinny Puppy,
Mhm.
and had never seen a Skinny Puppy show.
Mhm.
And I was like trying to think, like, is this going to be a good representation? Their final performance is at a good introduction.
Oh,
you know
yeah,
what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it covered all the bases. And I was
Mhm.
like, no, I think you got a full on Skinny Puppy experience,
Yeah.
and I was happy because she really enjoyed it.
Nice.
I got emotional with nostalgia a few times. I definitely started to cry a bit during Warlock. Like it hit
Yeah.
me that like that would be the last time I'd ever see that song performed live. You know what I mean? It just kind of fucked with my head a bit. Made me feel old, but also made me feel really grateful that they're still doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And still doing it well. So up until now.
Yeah.
And Assimilate as an encore.
Oh, yeah, that
was spot on.
I was a little surprised they didn't actually end with Assimilate. There was
Same.
Yeah, there was
Yeah. Candle.
Candle.
But no, it worked me up because like if it wasn't for Skinny Puppy and Download, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking about gear right now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I just felt it was worth mentioning, following up, closing the chapter, that they did come back to Pittsburgh, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Glad to see him one last time.
And once again, we were wrong. Like I feel because we were like, there's no way they're coming back.
Yeah.
Like that is a recurring theme in this podcast.
Well, we are pessimists and
right.
like,
and very dumb.
Yeah.
Just like shockingly dumb. So it checks out. I mean, the reasons why are obvious, but
Thanks for proving us wrong, Ogre and Kevin.
I mean, if they came to Pittsburgh just to spite us, it's worth it.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Clearly.
You showed us.